Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here, and thank you to Startup Safari for hosting us. We're gonna have a quick talk about development environments and how you can stop wasting time on setting them up. I'm Basim. I have to put my mask, but that is what I look like. I'm the co-founder of Myceleum. I'm a dev. I've been doing that for almost 8 years now, and basically setting up development environments is something that I found to be a problematic or to be a tedious process, and this is why this is what Mycelium is trying to solve. So I'm gonna share my screen, and well, this is not good. Let's see. I guess you should done that. I'm gonna have to quit and reopen. Well, technical difficulties. I'll be back in less than a minute. I'm back. Okay, sorry about that. I'm back. Let's try this again. Sharing my screen, and let's share our presentation. And hopefully you can see my screen now. Okay, so the webinar today is about it's called Stop Wasting Time on Development Environments. So what we're gonna cover is development environments and basically the complexity of them. We're gonna touch upon container technology, specifically Docker, and then we're gonna talk a bit about the problem and how Mycelium solves it, as well as how basically you can benefit as whether you're a student, whether even we're going to talk a bit about if you're a professor in a learning settings, how you can use Mycelium to actually improve the learning experience. So development environments, as the name says, basically they're where you develop any project or program. They're mainly a set of tools and procedures, maybe frameworks, runtimes. They're basically you cannot develop without them, and depending on which project you're using and depending on your own preferences, they vary a lot. And we're gonna basically talk a bit about what kind of like the variations we might have and how that can become problematic. So let's say you choose a project, you choose you're gonna first need to choose a language to write it in. This language is it's definitely gonna require a runtime. It might require an SDK as well. It will require some additional tools. But then you also have to maybe install Git as a source control. You want to install I don't know, maybe curl just because you wanna develop. You wanna basically grab some additional tools. So you have a lot of tools to install that need to be working together, and sometimes you have conflicts with versions. You have conflicts with what tools can work with other tools, and so all of this is something that you need to debug if you end up facing a problem, and it might not be obvious directly where the problem lies. So not only that, usually because of the complexity of a development environment, sometimes you run into problems that we call works on my machine problem, which means that you set up your development environment, you start coding, everything is running smoothly, and then someone on your team basically is trying to run the same project, and it fails. It doesn't compile. It gives errors. And so why is that? Usually, since it's the same code, usually it goes back to small changes in the dev environment. And so tracking those down and like figuring out what's the issue and then fixing it is just a waste of time. It's a waste of effort. And this is unfortunately something that happens a lot in software development. And so that's one of the complexities or complications that you get when you're working on a project within a team. Not only that, usually if you're setting a development environment, it's usually a manual process, which means basically that it relies on humans, and humans make errors. You can't sometimes basically script some of these things. You can write scripts so that you automate some of these processes, but then you need to know how to write the scripts, and you need to debug those scripts. So basically, what we think should happen is that development environments need to be isolated because so that basically they don't affect, one doesn't affect the other. And for that, we need to talk about containers first. So containers are something that are a technology that you might be using if you're following best practices for the past like few years. You would use it. So that basically the main container technology that you might know of is Docker, and basically it's simply put, it's just a way to isolate a process or a program, so that when it runs on the machine, it thinks that where it's running is the whole machine. It doesn't know about anything outside of the container. Now, containers have existed for some time now. They started way back with Linux, and basically Docker was the tool that made it a bit that made it easy to use, so it made it popular. But even though it made it easy, well, it made it easier to use to containerize projects, but there exists some complexities or some difficulties still, and this is why we see that you still have a lot of developers that do not use it on a daily basis, or that maybe are afraid of using it because there is this high level of or high barrier of entry. And so what we aim to do with Myceleum is to simplify, like leverage Docker, which is a great technology, and yet simplify it to allow everyone to use it. But also, that's not the whole point. The whole point is that we want to make it a lot easier for people to start developing without wasting time on setting up basically their dev environments. So to illustrate the problem a bit, basically setting up your environment is either a long task or a boring task, so depending on what level of experience you have. So if you're new, you're new to development, you've not set up a lot of projects yet, maybe it's a new language that you're trying to use, you're probably gonna face some issues. You're probably gonna basically be following guides. Maybe they miss one important step, that maybe you're following a blog post, they miss one important step, and you end up spending a few hours basically just trying to refollow all the steps you've done and like see what's the issue, why is it not working. But even if your experience is just something that when you know how to do it and then you just have to do it over and over again, just becomes a bit boring. And we think that this is something that can easily be solved and isn't. And this is This is the first problem we have. Second problem is what we touched upon earlier, which is the works on my machine problem, which means that when you're working in a team, everyone really needs to have the exact same environment. Not only that, ideally you want to have as close of an environment on local or as close on local as on production, because you don't want issues to pop up on production that you didn't catch on local. And basically we find that using Docker locally is a great way to do that, especially if you're Dockerizing your application in production. And so we basically the point of Myceleum is to make that process easier. Now, what is Myceleum? Myceleum is a platform that allows you to provision or to get or to install customizable development environments in a single click. They're already containerized because we are leveraging Docker to isolate these processes, to isolate these apps, so that you don't have these conflicts. To give you an example, let's say you're developing a program that has multiple components, and maybe when you started with the first component, it was running on node 8, let's say, and then as time goes on and you're developing again, you started the second component, you already had node 12. So now you need to if you're developing normally, you would have had to choose which version to run, or you would have to have used a tool like NVM, and it's not necessarily always the most straightforward to use. So with Myceleum, you can say, okay, I want two environments, one in node 8, one in node 12, and they can run separately. They can run at the same time next to each other without affecting the other. But also, what we do is we allow you as a person on the team to sync these environments across devices and across your team or for your team members, so that whatever you have on your machine is exactly the same that everyone else has. And this solves the other problem, which is that these small issues that usually crop up are eliminated now. Now if something doesn't work, it's most probably because of the code, and it will fail everywhere. It's not gonna be something that surprises you along the way. And basically the way we do that is that we allow you to customize your environment. Let's say you have a specific project, you want to basically expose specific ports, you want to have specific maybe API keys, you want to have specific environment variables, you want to have a specific tool, additional tool. All of that you can customize, and basically then you can publish your environment, and we're going to do a small demo in a bit. And once you do that, everyone on your team will be able to access it easily. Finally, we are working on a marketplace that allows you to basically publish your custom environments if you want to, and will allow developers to basically subscribe to these environments and basically not have to worry about maintenance, because whoever is providing them is gonna guarantee that. So to summarize, what is Myceleum? We are a platform. We have a desktop app that runs basically that leverages Docker containers. It allows users to create dev environments in less than 10 minutes. So basically, let's say you want to start a quick project. You want to, so for example, if you're attending the next talks, you want to start a web website, or maybe in React, maybe in Angular. Instead of downloading all these tools individually and then basically taking that time before starting coding, you can find an environment that's already set up, and You can just download it, everything will be there, and then you can focus on the coding part itself. But also, what Myceleum does is it allows a high level of customization, so that if you know what you're doing, the more you know what you're doing, the more you are familiar with Docker, the more we allow you to customize, because we're not. So we make it easy for people who don't have the necessary experience, but we do not stand in the way of people who know the details of Docker and who want to customize it as much as they want. So basically, we're going to see in a demo the way to use it is that you can choose your environment. It's already Dockerized. We integrate with your favorite IDE. We allow you to start in less than 10 minutes. You sync your environment across teams, and then basically your project will be easily very much ready to push to production. We're going to talk about it in a bit. For now, we support some of the main languages and frameworks like C++, C#, Go, Rust, PHP, Python, and basically we're working on adding more languages and more frameworks as we go along. Now I quickly want to talk a bit about what Myceleum can do in a classroom setting. So the way we think about Myceleum is that when you're learning about, let's say, data structures or something very specific, usually you're not focusing on the language. You're not learning the language. You're learning the idea that you happen to be learning at that point. And so let's take the example of data structures. Usually, data structures can be implemented in, like, let's say you want to do a linked list, right? You can implement it in any language. And so if you want to focus on the concept, then the language shouldn't matter. And what we think Myceleum can do in a classroom is that when you're given an assignment, instead of being forced to choose a language that the professor basically chooses for you, you can pick any language. Maybe even you wanna experiment, see if you got the concept right. So you wanna try to implement it in different languages. So instead of spending time on like setting up the language, setting up the runtime, the SDK, everything else around it before you start coding, you can directly jump into code. Make sure implement the code. Make sure that you really understand those data structures that you're learning about, and then submit your assignment in whatever language you chose. And then, as a professor, instead of having to worry about having that language that student randomly chose installed to be able to run it, to be able to make sure that it works, using Myceleum, you can easily, basically everything is already set up, so you can easily run it, make sure that the output it gives is correct, and then you can basically also obviously look at the code and see if it's correct. So basically, what we think this allows both students and professors to do is that they focus on the concepts that they want to learn, and they stop worrying about the languages. So as students maybe that are basically getting to know, getting introduced to programming, they can be excited about maybe a new language that they see. They get to use that language. They get to be exposed to it from the get-go, and so this leads to a better learning experience. Not only that, we usually notice that container technology and Docker is not something that you get exposed to a lot in university, for example, and so we think that this is a good introduction to containers by using Myceleum, so you at least get a bit of the concept behind them, and then you actually can experiment a bit with containers themselves using Myceleum, because as I'm gonna show in a bit, we allow you to customize your Docker file, and so we think this adds to the learning experience by exposing students to these technologies that otherwise they would encounter for the first time in the workplace, and that's not ideal usually. So I think it's demo time now, and I'm gonna quickly show some of the main features of Myceleum, and then we're gonna open the floors for Q&A. So this is Myceleum. What you see here, what you mainly interact with, is a desktop app. We have a service, a daemon running in the background, but you don't have to worry about that. And so basically, when you install it for the first time, what you're gonna see is what we call spores or environments, and you're gonna see the public ones, the ones that are available for everyone, that we chose, which we covered in a previous slide, which like C#, Golang, Java, Node, Python. And you get to choose whichever you want to try, and then with one click you basically can install it. And for this demo, I'm maybe gonna choose Node. And basically, when I click install, I get to choose a version. By default, we're gonna have the latest selected. And if you just wanna quickly run something, you can basically skip everything. You can just click finish, and notice here, because it's already cached and it's something we can optimize for, it took basically a few seconds and the environment is already available. Now we literally require one thing of you, which is to give us the project path, or where your code, either existing code lies or where you want to store your code. And for that, I'm just gonna basically choose a folder. It's called, I have a node folder here, and basically that's it. Now in a future version, what we're gonna add is also allowing you to paste a Git link for the GitHub, GitLab, and we'll be able to automatically clone your code if it exists, and basically try to make it a bit easier still to use it. Now I'm just going to point out this settings, which is the launch IDE, and basically what this will do is that it will automatically launch the IDE with your code, the folder that you already selected. Now we have a few IDEs here. We have a packaged IDE that we call the Myceleum IDE, which is very similar to VS Code, which we recommend. But we also have we can integrate with VS Code. We can integrate with most IDEs that you will have installed on your machine. So you can choose those, and it will work perfectly. So in this case, I'm just going to select Launch IDE. I'm going to select the Myceleum IDE, and I'm going to click the Launch button. And basically, in a couple of seconds, I have the IDE open. And this is basically, if you're familiar with VS Code, it's going to be a very similar experience. So I'm going to open a terminal. I'm gonna basically, I have a terminal running. I have already the Node version available. I'm gonna show it here. So I have version 13, which is what I selected, and this is the index.js, which is now empty. But I can basically start coding. I can do a console log, then hello, start up Safari. Save. I'm gonna do node index.js, and I'm gonna see it. So obviously, if you have a more complex project, it's gonna run the same. Now I'm gonna minimize this again, And so this is where we're gonna talk a bit about more customization that you can do. So actually, by default, what we do is that we expose the 3000 port on the external port 3001. So if I actually had an Express, let's say, app running here, and it was running on 3000, which is what usually Node apps run on, I could go on my browser and hit localhost 3001, and I'll be able to communicate with it directly. But obviously, if you have additional ports you want to expose, if you have maybe using something else, you can do that. And this is what we're going to talk about now. So I'm going to stop the workspace. I'm going to close the IDE, and we're going to talk a bit about what settings you can now configure. So one thing actually I didn't mention is that if you have a preference for a shell that's not Bash, we have a small selection of alternatives. So you can use Fish, ZSH, or Dash, whichever you prefer. And now this is basically where we get to what you might be familiar with if you know Docker. So if you want to mount volumes, additional volumes, you can do that here. Basically, you can map a volume on the host to a volume or to a folder inside the container, inside the environment, so that you have it available. You can add ports here. Let's say you also want to expose 5000. So I can say 5001 to 5000. Okay, I seem to have an error here. We're going to continue. And basically, we can set environment variables. Let's say you have an API key you want to add. You have a connection string you want to add. You can do it here easily. Commands are for integration with other IDEs. So let's say you have Rider or JetBrains and JetBrains IDE. Because we're still working on adding a native plugin, if you choose them, you will have a small floating window here with a play and stop button that work the same way as the debug button inside a normal IDE. And so the play or the debug button is basically what the start command will execute. So in this case, by default, it will run yarn start. Now, this is where things get even more interesting. If you know about Docker, or if you want to experiment with Docker, you can actually come here and customize this Docker file fragment, and it will be built as part of the environment, and will basically allow you to customize anything you wanna do. And then lastly, we allow you to add some apt or npm or pip packages that you want available in the environment. Let's say again, curl wget, anything you can think of, you can add it here. And finally, and this is the important part, is that once you're done, if you're on a team plan, and if you're part of a team and you want everyone on your team to have this exact same setup, you go here and click publish, and basically you name your spore, you choose a new version, and you hit publish. And once you do that, if you go back to spores and you filter by team, you're gonna see all these custom spores that were published, and everyone on your team will be able to see them as well, and be able to one-click install them. Now I'm gonna quickly mention a few more features. If you have a Docker file, a Docker Compose file, you can actually drag and drop it, and we will create a project for you. Or if you do not have that and you want to create a project manually, you can grab one of the workspaces and drop it into the other, and you'll have a project. And the whole point of a project is that if you want to run multiple workspaces together, like you would do, let's say, in a project where you have microservices, you can manage them easily. Not only that, we have, if I go here, we have what we call something called production mode, which means that if you want to simulate something in production, but you're not actually developing on it, you can do that. It's usually if you have, whether you have a database or you have a service that you just want it there to talk to, but you're not actively developing on. If it's already containerized, if you have a Docker image for it, you can add this the Docker image name, and we'll pull it for you, whether it's a public one or a private one. If it's a private one, you can just go into settings, add your own private registry, and we'll be able to pull it for you. Finally, we're working on some cool features like being able to quickly, once you have this project, if you want to easily deploy it to, let's say, Azure or AWS, and you don't have a lot of experience with them, you just want something quick, we are working on a feature that allows you to, once you have your project, once it's set up, it's like you want it, just with a few clicks, it will be published, and we'll handle setting up everything there for you, so that you don't have to worry about like the complexities of AWS or Azure. We're also working on some additional features that we're gonna keep as a surprise. So make sure to follow us on LinkedIn or Twitter, and we'll be announcing them soon. That's it for the talk. I'm gonna stop my screen sharing, and I'm gonna now be opening the floor for any questions if you have any. Thank you. The question is, what type of client do you target? I hope it's I hope I understood correctly. You mean a business client. Who we're targeting are basically software companies who maybe are growing, are hiring on onboarding engineers. So basically, we make it a lot easier to onboard engineers, because if the project is already set up, it can take basically less than 10 minutes for an engineer to start coding. We also basically, whether you're also a software company that has a project that's in constant development, so you're adding components, you're removing components, is something that we make it a lot easier as well. Finally, or not finally, but at least for software companies, as you mentioned when you're talking about the pushing, or like making it a lot easier to push to AWS and Azure. So if you're a small company that don't have maybe the expertise or the budget to have someone to take care of that, then we make it a lot easier for you to handle basically pushing your application to production. Other than software companies, we are targeting educational institutions, so whether universities, boot camps that want basically their students to quickly get set up with a project, to focus on the project itself. We touched upon it a bit in the last slide. And lastly, we think if you work in data science and you usually don't necessarily have the background for some, how to code maybe in Python, but you don't necessarily have the background to set up a machine properly, or the other things around the code. And so we try to make it a lot easier for you to do that. This is basically an overview of who we think can benefit from Myceleum. So basically, a lot of the main functionalities are for free. You can go on the website, download it, and start using it. We hope to basically add more features to the free tier so that you still benefit from it. If you actually, if you register now, then you will get a free pro tier with the existing basic features for life. So make sure to download it now and create an account. For companies and educational institutions, feel free to get in touch with us, and we can discuss. Basically a custom solution for you. Okay. So yeah, so currently basically we're doing mostly outbound marketing, but we're working on creating content on our website and on our blog to have a better inbound marketing as well.
Sorry, outbound.
Yeah, just to basically add to the last point, for outbound marketing, basically we're doing what we're doing now, which is organizing webinars, talking to people that we think might be interested, and basically discussing with them how Myceleum can benefit them. Thank you.